Oh! Oh! Oh, God damn it! Darkest Dungeon. How to explain Darkest Dungeon? Well, you ever play an RPG and think to yourself, why is this boyish twink not running and screaming in fear when confronted with intimidating monsters? Why does this game not implement his feminine screams and anxiety into actual gameplay mechanics? Luckily for you, Darkest Dungeon does just that. Made and published by Red Hook Studios, the game describes itself as a challenging gothic roguelite turn-based RPG about the psychological stresses of adventuring. I describe it as a wildly unstable yet wildly attractive goth girl. She'll lure you in with her feminine wiles, the promise of treasure, copious amounts of eyeshadow, and those big strappy boots. She'll provide hours upon hours of entertainment when in a good mood, but lay your guard down and she's gonna use those metal-tipped fashion statements to kick you square in the dick. Darkest Dungeon is about adventuring through ruins, warrens, coves, and, wee owls, trying to collect treasure and gain experience with your ragtag team of mentally unwell Neanderthals. Level them up and cure their herpes enough times till they're prepared to take on the final challenge, the Darkest Dungeon itself. One of the many challenges of the game is to not get too attached, though. Death is permanent in this game, and no mission is entirely safe from a good old critical hit coming at your favorite character. No progression or reward without some calculated risk, though. Like my dad always said, the power tools work faster if you take the guards off of them, Verac. Safety third! Additionally, the ghost of your ancestor who left you the birthright of these run-down Walmart parking lots will narrate your adventures, successes and failures alike. He's a great guy who's never done anything wrong. Nothing that's been proven in a court of law, anyway. Darkest Dungeon is easily one of my favorite games of all time. Top 10 for sure. Right up there, sandwiched between Team Fortress 2 and Monster Girl Quest. It has the perfect mix of strategy, RNG, and presentation. Darkest Dungeon is one of my favorite games of all time. You should play it, and I want to tell you why. This game owes a lot to a certain long-faced, Welsh-hating, perfectly Anglo individual named Mr. Howard Phillips Lovecraft, better known as H.P. Lovecraft. You know, that guy who made a name for himself in the horror genre by describing his monsters as indescribable and imperceivable, then describing in brutal detail how his characters were perceiving them for the next 2 pages, as well as having a really funny cat. H.P. Lovecraft is renowned in the horror scene to this day. Basically, he was big into that fear of the unknown thing. He extrapolated his fear of the unknown out to its logical end conclusion to achieve his horror. Writing of the most inhuman, unknowable things possible. Giant, monstrous alien demons chock full of tentacles and strange appendages that cannot be understood and have cultish followings. Well, that and Asian people, according to him anyway. He's got a big legacy, though. He's responsible for Cthulhu, the Necronomicon, and many other horror staples that continue to be referenced and inspire other creations to this day. Darkest Dungeon is one of these creations. Lovecraft's stories were often dark, gritty, hopeless, and paranoid, where everything was just a little bit off even when things were normal. Darkest Dungeon tries its best to reflect that mood, and succeeds in many ways. Visually, everything is gritty and slightly smudged, using thick outlines and dark colors and tones. My favorite part is the eyes. Everybody has eyes that are covered by complete darkness. So when you look at the residents of the Darkest Dungeon world, everybody looks a little unhinged, or somehow mentally absent. Like the sort of people you see hanging out in the gas station at 3 in the morning. Its enemies and locations are also representative of the Lovecraft stories, some in more obvious ways than others. The many cultists you'll find are a clear reference, as many of Lovecraft's works had cults worshipping otherworldly forces. Another obvious one is the Fishmen enemies, which are a direct reference to the Deep Ones from Shadow over Innsmouth. A tale about how fish people fucked all the good jobs and worked all the good women in Massachusetts, or something like that. Though, my favorite way that Darkest Dungeon immerses you in this horror novella environment is with the extremely memorable narration.
Impressive.
Red Hook Studios found the best casting choice they could have possibly asked for with Wayne June, the narrator of the game. I assume they found him by simply searching Lovecraft audiobook on YouTube, found one of his readings, then went, oh my god, he's perfect, then immediately went to go find him to give him a suck and a paycheck. I mean, I think most people would. I would. Listen to that voice.
Remind yourself that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer.
So of course Red Hook reached out to Mr. June just for the teaser trailer of the game initially, then found he fit the role so well that they cast him as the narrator for the whole game. He plays the role of the Ancestor. The Ancestor acts as the narrator of your story, a live-action Lovecraft story that you get to create. You provide the characters and the actions taken, the enemies and environments set the stage, and the Ancestor provides the sometimes celebratory, sometimes demoralizing, always smug asshole commentary. Oh boy, that was a tough fight, but now it looks like success is clearly in view. I sure hope nobody warns me to stay humble in a somewhat whimsical fashion.
Success so clearly in view. Or is it merely a trick of the light?
Shit! By the way, the Ancestor is your ancestor. I may talk about spoilers for a second here, so if you care, skip ahead to the timestamp on the screen. The Ancestor's leaving you his entire estate. What a great guy. His hamlet, his village, is now yours as well. People have made a lot of wacky and uncharacteristic claims about him, though. Some say he's responsible for the growing corruption found within the estate. I say he's a victim of bad press who's been forced into more self-defense situations than a man should have to endure. He just happens to have creative methods of defending himself, including, but not limited to, the following accusations. Drowning a homeless preteen for fish money, killing necromancers in their sleep, then performing necromancy on them, drowning pirates with his negative vibes, exiling a woman for smoking the Zaza, scaring a guy so bad he tore his own eyes out, hiring bandits to kill a significant percentage of the hamlet with a fucking cannon, stabbing a woman and draining her blood, much like one would drain the blood of a slaughtered pig, into a collection of vintage wine, then serving the wine off to a bunch of elites who turned into mosquitoes because they drank it, and using the hamlet's food supply for rituals and blood sacrifice to create pig-human hybrids and flesh abominations. Your Honor, it was Funky Monkey Friday. My client had to go ape. Anyway, he explains in the intro cutscene that after being a playboy for so many years, you get tired of it and start to dig underneath your house to look for Cthulhu. After actually finding Cthulhu and being surprised by this for some reason, he tries not to go crazy. He fails, he goes crazy. He writes you a letter in his last moments, leaving his entire estate to you in the hopes that you'll, sort it out or something. You don't have a choice. Get on the cart, you're going to Skyrim.
Finally awake.
This is where your live-action Lovecraft story begins, so try to get into character for one of his tales. Start brooding and frantically pacing around. Stop brushing your teeth. Consider what may lurk in the shadows within the drywall of your home. Cultivate racist thoughts and then post them on the internet. Or if you already do all those things, good job, you're ready to go! Woo! You'll start by naming your estate, which is your save file. You can't change it, so pick something good. You'll play a tutorial mission before heading off to your estate, aka the Hamlet, your base of operations. The basic gameplay loop starting from here is this. Prepare in the Hamlet, build a team, buy provisions, and go on a mission. Fight some evil, corrupted creatures, and the French. Return to the Hamlet with treasure, experience, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Repeat until you're strong enough to take on the darkest dungeon. In the Hamlet, you've got several services at hand. Upgrading your character's gear and skills, curing their ailments, curing their gay away, then sucking their gay back into them to relieve stress. Pay for the services with gold, and upgrade the services to be more efficient with heirlooms, both of which are found in dungeons. Each mission has a main goal, like exploring 90% of the rooms in a dungeon. You can retreat before completing it at any time, but the mental health of your characters will suffer. Complete the primary goal of your mission while making it out with as much treasure and as few planned funerals or therapy sessions as possible. The stress system is one of the unique mechanics that makes this game stand out so much. I love it a lot and have proportionally a lot of shit to say about it, so buckle up. All your characters have health bars and stress bars. Some enemies may attack you in the traditional sense, with tentacles, that is, to strike at your body. Other enemies will attack you mentally, with threats of violating you with tentacles, that is, to strike at your team's morale. Let me draw you an analogy. Have you ever played a competitive team game? It could be a video game or a real sport. The psychology is the same in my experience. Imagine you're playing League of Legends. Stick with me here, resist the urge to flame the chat, nothing's even happened yet. Imagine you're playing League of Legends and someone on the enemy team starts shit-talking your carry. Your carry has been taunted now in real life by this, and is now playing poorly in his blind rage. He gets baited and dies. The carry is now shit-talking the entire allied team for letting him die, saying, "You're all terrible, suck his dick, he's a grandmaster on his alt account," and so on. If you've been in this position, you know that by this point, the game is fucking over. It's done. If someone becomes this demoralized, they're not only useless, they can be actually detrimental to the team. It's hard to bring them back into the team as a functional member of society at this point. They're more likely to foment chaos among their allies than they are to actually try to win the game. Darkest Dungeon stress is based on this same psychology, and it's up to you to manage your team so that they don't reach that point of demoralization. A character reaching 100 stress will force them into one of two states. They may become virtuous, like a diamond made from the pressure of adversity. In this state, they will become more powerful and buff themselves and allies. Or, the incredibly more likely option upon reaching 100 stress, they'll become afflicted and download League of Legends. An afflicted character, depending on the specific affliction, is likely to refuse to be healed, berate his allies, potentially even strike them physically, or simply pass his turn in protest. All these actions are liable to cause even further stress on his other allies, potentially causing a domino effect of afflictions in them as well. What I really like about the stress system is that it mimics the very real concept of morale, something Red Hook thought to implement after being inspired by the show Band of Brothers. I love how they implemented it for a couple of reasons. For one, I always wondered how characters in video games would psychologically react to adventuring and dungeon crawling. You can imagine being in their position and being stressed out by a lot of the same shit. If one of your companions becomes paranoid and starts berating the team, that's pretty stressful. When you see one of your teammates killed right next to you by a big fish man, that's also pretty stressful. Or when the little skeleton man throws his little sippy cup of mystery juice on your head, that is also quite stressful. The other reason I love it is because it's a huge part of combat that I feel many video games ignore or implement in an unsatisfying manner. And it's a factor worth including, because for most of human history, many battles were determined by morale and stress. This was before we started fighting with drones sponsored by Coca-Cola instead of killing each other with our bare hands, just like God intended. The monsters of Darkest Dungeon, unfortunately for you, understand this principle of combat in a way that enemies in other video games do not take advantage of. They will attack your emotions. They will call you names. Remember that time you did something really cringy in middle school and everybody laughed? They remember. And they're gonna tell all your friends about it. And that's why you gotta kill them! It's all about balance, though. Health and stress are both important in Darkest Dungeon. It's usually my priority to kill enemies that inflict a lot of stress damage. They're usually weaker, shiftier looking guys that sit in the back line. But if your team is severely physically injured, even if they're at risk of becoming afflicted, it may be wise to instead take out the enemies that are making you bleed more than the ones that are hurting your feelings. Aside from the stress system, the game's got an essentially classic RPG battle system. Turn-based, with each character having stats like accuracy, dodge, critical hit chance, and so on. However, there's also a lot of importance placed on the position of characters in this game. Generally speaking, tanks and DPS go in front, supports, healers, and range damage dealers in the back. Some attacks deal bleed or blight damage per turn. They function the same in regards to damage, but they vary in usefulness depending on the target. Skeletons, for example, have extremely high bleed resist for obvious reasons, but are very easy to blight, whereas the filthy pigmen have higher blight resist than other units, but they're weak to bleed. Other mechanics include stuns, which are great and useful when you use them on an enemy to skip their turn, or stupid and bullshit when used on your heroes. Another mechanic is marking a target, placing a bullseye on a unit of your choice. The bullseye mark effect itself does nothing, but it's just the setup. The payoff is the many skills that benefit from hitting a marked target. It's good to have at least one hero with a healing skill, even if it's small healing. If a hero hits 0 HP, they'll be on death's door. Take another hit from there, and they may permanently die. All they need is 1 HP to come back from that death's door status. They'll be a little worse for wear for the rest of the mission, but they won't be gone. Put the thought of keeping all your heroes at full HP out of your mind. Instead, focus on keeping them acceptably alive. The longer you spend healing instead of attacking is another turn that a fishman, a swine man, a Londoner, or a Frenchman could crit you to 0 HP anyway and cause stress to your entire team in the process. So when you're considering whether to heal or attack, keep this pro tip in mind. They can't hurt you if they're dead. Apart from engaging in fights with the homeless and the skinless, you'll also engage in exploration during your missions. Each map is procedurally generated with different rooms and hallways that connect them. Grab loot while you traverse the hallways and interact with curios that grab your attention. Most curios have a specific random chance to give either a positive or a negative result when interacting with them, so it's a roll of the dice. Unless you have specific provisions that you can use on them. Some curios need to be cleansed with holy water. Others need your home blend of herbs and spices. Then they'll provide a guaranteed positive result. Or a guaranteed negative result if you use a bad one. You could always just look up a big list of what provisions work with what curio if you were a little bitch. But you're not. You're a real gamer, of course. Besides, the game will remind you which provision has what result after you try it at least once, so just give it a shot. And by the way, if you're seeing any provisions work on what curios from this video, those are freebies, don't worry. Here's your Verac Gamer Pass. Give it to Red Hook. You'll keep your gamer status if you use what you learned from this video, I promise. Aside from curios and loot, hallways can also have random enemy encounters, traps, and obstacles in them. If you're lucky and one of your heroes has randomly scouted ahead, you might be able to see these coming and prepare yourself to deal with them, or to avoid them if there's another path. On longer missions, you can set up camp to recover physical and mental health that you've suffered during your journey. You can use campfire skills to have your crew help each other out. Careful using skills of afflicted characters, though. They might refuse to do the skill you ask them to do, and yet still take the points for using it. Last for exploration, I'm going to talk about light. Light is extremely important and your primary way of determining risk versus reward. The meter starts at 100 when you enter the dungeon and will deplete slowly as you move from room to room. Use torches to fill it back up. The more light you have, you'll have higher bonuses to combat, scouting, and general safety. The darker it is, the more combat bonuses your enemies will have, and you'll very rarely see ahead of you via scouting. But you'll receive significantly more treasure. Snuffing the light out for extra loot is my usual MO because I like the risk. Just like real life though, keep in mind when you walk around in the dark, there's a chance you could have a fun visitor. It's time to talk about the characters. There's too many of them. If I start going off about them individually with no structure, this is gonna go on for hours and hours and I'm gonna have to retitle it Darkest Dungeon: A Quick Retrospective, and I'm not about to do that. Not yet, anyway. So welcome to Verac-splaining. Verac-splaining is a new segment where I harass unsuspecting women with video game knowledge and loudly talk over them, while also giving myself a challenge in how I explain myself. My unsuspecting woman is here, shut up, and my challenge is this. Verac-splaining in 10 words or less challenged. And then in big parentheses on the screen, impossible. And then another parentheses, gone wrong. And then another one, gone sexual.
Oh, excuse me? Sexual?
Crusader. John Paladin kills skeletons and doesn't afraid of anything. Leper. Big health, big hits, huge shits, misses crits. Hellion. I want her barbarian tomboy abs to sack my capital. Perfect 10 words, by the way. Woo! Man at Arms. Metal Gear Solid 4. Guns of the Patriots.
I don't know anything about Metal Gear Solid.
You don't have to. He's old and he punches another old guy and it's like vaguely sexual, but that's just Kojima for you. Shieldbreaker. Shantae's got no arm, but at least she got snake powers. Flagellant. He's sort of like the Berserker class, like when he gets below half health, he has these two really powerful healing abilities that he can use. One is for himself and one is for allies. The healing one on allies heals them for like 50% of their health. Super strong. But you can only use these things like twice before they go out. The one that he uses on an enemy just for himself bleeds really hard. All of his skills bleed really hard, and then when he hits on death's door,
a few minutes later.
That was way longer than 10 words.
Shut up. Vestal. Reliable healing. Lady is repressed and I can fix her. Another perfect 10 words. Woo! Arbalist. First video game sniper with a healing ability ever made. Musketeer. Second video game sniper with a healing ability ever made. Antiquarian. Female CEO gets drafted. Girl boss is borderline useless in combat. Another perfect 10. Woo! Occultist. Unreliable healing. Not repressed enough, and I can fix him. Plague Doctor. Renaissance cosplayer found real knife and real bubonic plague formula. Abomination. Some of you guys are alright. Don't come to the ruins tomorrow. Great.
Oh my god!
Grave robber. What if Highwayman was a girl? Highwayman. What if grave robber was a guy? Houndmaster. What if Highwayman was a dog? Jester. I'm the Joker, baby.
This is devolving.
Bounty hunter. Radicalized dad just wanted to grill. Now he wants to kill. Did I meet my challenge of explaining with only 10 words per character? Did I Verac-splain to her aggressively enough? You decide. Comment below. For every comment this video gets praising the Verac-splaining section, I will make her sleep in the garage for a day.
But there isn't a garage.
Now go on, get
No.
out of here. Go on, get.
No.
Get. You filthy, stupid animal. Get out of here. Get out of here. DLC. Butcher Circus. Butcher Circus is a PvP mode for Darkest Dungeon, and it is complete nonsense. Try it out if you want to. It is free after all, but I don't recommend it unless you're playing it versus a good friend that you would like to downgrade to just an okay friend after a few games. Musketeer. She's just a reskin of Arbalist. If you prefer a gun instead of a crossbow, give her a try. Shieldbreaker. Unlike Musketeer, Shieldbreaker is a standalone, fully fleshed out hero class. She can break through guards, pierce armor, and throw snakes at people. Color of Madness. It's a mostly self-contained survival mode, but with rewards that you can use in the rest of the game. Solid addition to the game, and very reasonably priced. The Crimson Court, baby! The first DLC added to the game, and the most expansive in terms of content. Includes my personal favorite character, the Flagellant. It's also my favorite interpretation of vampires in any media, as aristocratic mosquito-human hybrids. I recommend buying this if you are a hyper-autismo like myself and have already played through the game at least once, because it significantly changes the base game to be more challenging. If you've played Darkest Dungeon before and want to try it again in a different way, definitely check it out. Darkest Dungeon is one of my favorite games of all time. I keep coming back to it no matter how many years pass, and I can't recommend it enough. I didn't cover the final region in this video, the Darkest Dungeon itself, because it's one of those things that I really hope you'll experience for yourself if you haven't yet before. It's a very fitting climax considering the material that inspired the game. The game's gonna have a sequel soon. At this video's time of release, Darkest Dungeon 2 is planned to release on Steam in February of 2023. Red Hook really impressed me with Darkest Dungeon and its DLCs, so I'm hopeful that the sequel will be quality. Darkest Dungeon is a fantastic game. I give it 9 degenerate anime titty mods out of 10. Highly recommended. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you very much for watching. And a special thank you to my shady cabal of Vidya elites and Vidya connoisseurs. Your untraced blood money keeps these videos coming. I love you all very much. Thanks again, and see you next time.